Now that violent crime is at a 40-year low, someone has to explain why your local police department has gone from this to this.
Yeah.
Has anybody here tonight ever heard of Doraville, Georgia? Me neither. But it's a town of 8,000 people, and they have their own tank. So does Nixa, Missouri, and Justice, Illinois. What these small towns and hundreds just like them have in common, besides a refreshing lack of hipsters, is that they, and big cities too, have been gifted by the Pentagon with tons of government surplus war equipment, fresh from our glorious victories in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, the pictures from Ferguson, Missouri have gone viral, painted a dark picture. Local police, armed to the teeth, carrying weapons in the same manner we see on the battlefields of the Middle East. Armored vehicles rolling onto city streets and a population claiming they fear nothing short of a takeover from those seeking to subdue them. But that is one picture, one side, and one set of opinions. But there is a growing sentiment of support for cops from those who understand the game has become much more deadly. And all they're doing is responding to what society has turned into. Welcome to MidPoint, Director of the Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation, Steve Bucci, and host of the syndicated radio show Florida Live on the News Talk Florida Radio Network, Dan Maduri. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Steve, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Let's first of all set a couple of ground rules here as we go through this whole issue here. Where do you stand, and what's the whole thinking here on militarization? If you put into effect what has gone on here in this country, are we over-militarized?
No, we're not over-militarized. What we saw in Ferguson was a misuse of perfectly legitimate equipment in the wrong situation. It was a leadership issue. That was a very poor response to crowd control. That equipment that they brought out might have been needed for a terrorist event, an active shooter event at a school, or a big drug bust against an organized crime group, which exists in Missouri, by the way. But not for a crowd control situation with your citizens. So the equipment's not the problem. It was the leadership decisions to use that equipment in that situation.
All right, Dan, to you, equipment or leadership?
I actually agree with both. I think it is the equipment. I think it is the leadership. In fact, as you sit there and you look at Ferguson, Missouri, you find out some glaring questions. And one of those questions would simply be, are they going through the proper training? Are they seeing the proper training, and what effect does these perceptions that now the police officers do have military equipment, now are willing to take sniper rifles, stand behind armored vehicles, and point them at peaceful protesters? Now, what dynamic is the police officer's role with the citizens here in the United States of America? And I think that Ferguson, Missouri has just shown some glaring, gaping holes in the DOD's 1033 project.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here for something I just hate to do but love to do from time to time as well. We heard that clip from Bill Maher coming in where he talked about violent crime in this country being at a 40-year low. Dan, I'll start with you on this one. When he points out everything that's been done and all the equipment that's there, is that because that equipment is there and police have militarized that crime is at a 40-year low?
No, I don't think it's the fact that it's military equipment in the hands of police officers who probably aren't receiving the proper training and usage of it. I think it's just simply a fact that you're seeing a lot more technology now. You're seeing a lot more CC televisions now, and people, they're being found quicker. You're seeing great demonstrations of great police work when it comes to, say, the Boston Marathon bombing. It took them about 72 hours to catch those terrorists. People are seeing that, they're willing and witnessing and saying, you know what, I don't want to mess with the police.
Steve, is it that simple? Is it CCD cameras and other things like that that have brought our crime down?
Those things have contributed to bringing it down, but there are very discrete situations when you want your police to have more than just a soft vest that only stops pistol bullets and a sidearm when he goes into a situation. We've had numerous situations here in the United States where the police in the past have been badly outgunned by the bad guys. Now, you don't want the police walking around doing their normal routine patrols carrying their M4 carbine. But when the shooting starts, you can't afford to wait for somebody to show up from the state capitol. If your kids were in the school at Sandy Hook, you want the police to be able to respond like that to get in there and stop that shooter. So that we have to have a balance here. We need these things, but they need to be used appropriately in a very narrow group of situations.
All right, Steve. So instead of just the fact, and I think a lot of people will agree with you, that it was probably overused and a bit heavy-handed in Ferguson, Missouri. But outside of all that, though, why is it suddenly we are awash in this country in this over-militarization debate? And there's a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon here. I mean, Rand Paul says the federal government is partially to blame here because they have funded militarization. There's a word that 8 days ago nobody had really heard.
Well, the situation is this. This stuff was started as part of the war on drugs because drug cartels were getting more and more armament in domestic crime situations. It then, obviously, after 9/11, everybody was worried, well, how are we going to respond to terrorists? Are we going to have a situation like Mumbai where there are guys with grenades and assault rifles and our police have to respond to it? First of all, the situation in Ferguson, about 99% of the equipment you see in all the pictures didn't come from DOD. It may have been bought with DHS grant money, I'll give you that. And as I said, it was used incorrectly. But people are putting all the blame on DOD's 1033 program. Most of this equipment did not come from that program.
Dan, are we then at a stage where, here's that great word, I'll tell you, it seems I use it every single day when it comes down to any different number of issues here, optics. It simply comes down to what we've seen, what the video is, and what people are immediately reacting to then without knowing what actually goes on behind the scenes to get there?
No, I don't think it is at all. I mean, granted, perception is a big part of American society, but the fact remains is that the DOD 1033 program, Ferguson, Missouri, is using weapons from there. We can argue the degree of how much they are using it in Ferguson, Missouri, but it just goes down to the fundamental problem that it's all wrong. I mean, prime example, I saw a recruiting video recently for a local police department. This recruiting video, I mean, it plays like a Michael Bay summer blockbuster for a major Hollywood production. It has a cop in camouflage in the darkness lurking towards a house. He then kicks the door open, throws a flashbang grenade into the house, then reaches for his AR-15 as he goes to clear the house.
But Dan, would you not also agree that the cops do that sometimes because the other guys have AR-15s as well?
Well, I know, I will agree with that, but what I'm saying is that that is your general approach to trying to recruit people into the police force, not the specialty. I'm all for, say, SWAT teams. I'm all for, say, bomb disposal units having the proper equipment to defend themselves and to defend us. But there has been a certain degree, and let's say Lieutenant Ray Albers of St. Anne Police Force, he's a prime example. Here's a 20-year veteran, who was walking down the streets in Ferguson, Missouri, was faced by a bunch of peaceful protesters. His response was to raise his AR-15, point him at the chest, and say, "I'll expletive kill you. I'll expletive kill you." It was caught on multiple cameras. People saw it. In the training, it's just not there. And the use of unnecessary force, you're seeing it now.
Okay.
Prime example.
Let me go ahead. I got only a little bit, about a minute or so left here. So, Steve, let me get to you. Would stricter gun control laws here stop the criminals from being so well armed? So many people say that's the key.
No, I don't think it would be. I wish it was the answer. The bad guys don't usually go to your average gun store, fill out all the paperwork, and buy their assault rifles there. They get them through illegal means. So I think that's kind of a red herring. I agree with my colleague. These guys need training. It obviously needed to be better in Ferguson than what they got. There needs to be disciplined use of this stuff, but just throwing it all out, you're really throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Maybe better psychological testing as well of the cops themselves?
Oh, I think anybody that handles firearms or any other use of deadly force, certainly they need to be as prepared and trained and psychologically screened as possible.
How about that, Dan? You agree with that as well?
If you go this route and you continue to militarize police officers in the United States of America, it's going to be more of a dissension between the citizens and the police department. It's going to reinforce the authoritarian mentality, and it's going to create an us versus them type of atmosphere. And I just think it's a dangerous way to continue and a dangerous path to continue with zero oversight committee at all registered to this. I mean, these local police departments, they're making a list. They're checking it twice. It's Christmas for them. It's free, and they can have anything their heart desires.
We're going to have to call that the last word. Dan Maduri, Steve Bucci, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Later on this hour, the White House was burning. The key word there is was. It was 200 years ago. The Second Revolutionary War. When MidPoint continues.